Family vanished on vacation in 1975 to 27 years later their car turns up in a lake. I still remember the morning my uncle called me in a panic. It was late August 2002, and the sun hadn't fully come up yet when the phone rang in my apartment. I was groggy, still half asleep, but his voice cut through everything like a knife. "They found it," he said. "The car. At the bottom of Crescent Lake." That one sentence was enough to snap me wide awake. I knew exactly what he meant. He was talking about the Becketts. A family of four, David and Martha Beckett and their two kids, Emily and Nathan, who vanished without a trace while on a road trip in the summer of 1975. My uncle, Calvin, had been the lead officer on the case back then, and though I was just a kid at the time, I'd grown up with the story as a kind of permanent fixture in our family's past. Like a scar that never quite faded. They'd left their home in Columbus, Ohio, for a 2-week vacation across the upper Midwest. National parks, roadside diners, cheap motels, the classic 1970s family adventure. David Beckett, a factory supervisor, had planned every stop on a yellow legal pad that was later found in their locked house. They were last seen at a gas station outside Lanesboro, Minnesota, August 12, 1975, filling up their bronze 1970 Plymouth Satellite and buying soda and maps. And then they were gone. No car, no bodies, no sign of foul play. Just vanished. That gas station clerk was the last person to ever see them. Until now. Crescent Lake was 30 miles north of that final gas station. A narrow, deep body of water surrounded by dense forest. It was rarely used except by locals and the occasional kayaker. There were no piers, no resorts, no summer cabins like the other lakes around. Just cold, still water and steep, muddy banks. What happened was simple, almost too simple. A dry summer had lowered the lake's waterline by nearly 8 feet, exposing part of a rusted roof near the edge. A hiker spotted it. Local authorities were called. Divers went in, and what they found was the Beckett's car. I flew out the next morning. I was working as a freelance journalist in Chicago at the time, mostly chasing boring assignments for local weeklies, but this was personal. This wasn't just another cold case reopening, this was our ghost story. And for some reason, I felt like I had to see it. The car was brought up in pieces. Time and water had torn it apart. Rusted doors, broken glass, a steering wheel coated in slime. No license plate, but the VIN matched. No doubt, it was their Plymouth. And inside, they found something that didn't make sense. In the back seat, beneath layers of mud and silt, was a child's shoe. Blue canvas, size 2. Clean, no mold, no water damage, as if it had just been placed there yesterday. My uncle Calvin met me in town that evening. He'd retired in 1999, but when the sheriff's office pulled the car out of the lake, they called him immediately. He still had the original files, yellowed, brittle folders locked in an old metal filing cabinet in his garage. He brought them with him to the diner. "I've gone over this 1,000 times, he said, sipping burnt coffee. "They never made it past this region. We canvassed every road, every path, even had search planes. How the hell did we miss that lake?" He laid out a map from 1975, pointing to a small logging road that used to run near Crescent Lake's southern rim. It had been abandoned and overgrown for decades, now just a faint trail barely visible from the sky. The theory, he said, was always that they'd taken a wrong turn. But there were problems with that theory. Big ones. First, there was no reason for them to be anywhere near that lake. Their planned route had them heading northwest, toward Brainerd. Crescent Lake was in the opposite direction. Second, the car was wedged at a strange angle, as if it had rolled in backward. And all the doors were locked. Third, and most disturbing, the driver's seat was empty. No remains. Not even bone fragments. Only 2 partial skeletons were recovered. One in the front passenger seat and one in the trunk. Preliminary forensic reports suggested they were adult-sized, but no one had been officially identified yet. And the kids? Nothing. That's when things started getting weird. The shoe was the first clue. It didn't belong in a submerged car for 27 years, not in that condition. But that wasn't the only thing out of place. They also found a Kodak camera. An Instamatic 133, standard for that time. Its casing was waterlogged, but the film inside was still intact. I watched as the sheriff laid the damp cartridge on a cloth and carefully unspooled it. It looked like ruined black sludge, but the lab said they could recover some images. I didn't sleep much that week. The first image was exactly what you'd expect. A roadside shot of David and Martha smiling outside a diner, kids sitting on the hood of the car. The kind of memory you'd want to keep from a vacation. But the second photo was something else. It showed Crescent Lake, but from above, a black and white aerial view, clearly taken from a high elevation. The trees around the lake looked older, denser. The shadows suggested dusk. In the center of the frame, a dark spot in the water. Something submerged. And in the lower corner, almost missed by everyone but the technician scanning the negatives, the outline of a car. Their car. But the photo wasn't dated. And here's the kicker. Kodak confirmed the film batch was produced in late 1976. A full year after the family vanished. The photograph sparked a frenzy. First, it reignited national media interest. Old reporters who'd covered the Beckett case returned with notebooks full of dust, interviewing anyone even remotely connected. TV vans parked outside the sheriff's office for days. But it was the second wave, amateur sleuths, true crime bloggers, online forums, that dug the deepest. One user on a message board called Dead Dens posted a side-by-side comparison of satellite images from 1975 and the photo recovered from the camera. According to him, the tree lines didn't match. There were extra growths in the recovered photo, some missing landmarks. One stump near the shoreline looked intact in the Kodak shot, but had reportedly been cut down in 1969. Another poster zoomed in on the surface of the lake in the photo. They claimed, if you looked closely, you could see a ripple, almost like something was being dragged under. Like the car wasn't just in the lake, but being pulled into it. The post got flagged and deleted. But I saw it, and I couldn't unsee it. 3 days later, I visited the Beckett house. It was still standing, barely, on the east side of Columbus, Indiana, a quiet, overgrown neighborhood where time had folded in on itself. The yard was wild with weeds. The mailbox still bore their name, though rust had consumed most of the paint. The new owner, a woman in her 50s who'd bought the place as is in 91, agreed to let me walk through. She said she always knew something felt off about the house. Like it wasn't really hers. Inside, it was frozen in a peculiar blend of decades, faded shag carpet, yellowed wallpaper with ivy patterns, fixtures that hummed when touched. But it was the upstairs hallway that caught my attention. The air grew colder there. Tangibly colder. I found Emily's bedroom. The wallpaper had cartoon clouds and rabbits. The dresser still had old, half-torn stickers on it. Lisa Frank-style unicorns, a faded rainbow. A small bookshelf stood in the corner. Most of the books had been removed long ago. Except one. A green hardcover notebook, spine cracked, no visible title. Inside were pages of childish handwriting. Diary entries. Dated the summer of '75. Most were what you'd expect, talking about her little brother, about her mom packing for the trip, how excited she was to see a real bear at a park. But the last entry was different. It was dated August 11, 1975, the day before they vanished. We saw it again today at the lake. I told Daddy, but he just said I was imagining it. It's under the water, but not like a fish. It doesn't swim. It watches. I think it remembers. If we go there tomorrow, I won't get out of the car. I'll stay inside and lock the doors. I photocopied that page and brought it back to my uncle. He looked at it for a long time in silence. Then he reached into his file box and pulled out a crumpled map. A topographical survey done in 1972. He laid it flat on the diner table, smoothing it with one hand. "Look at this," he said. "Here's Crescent Lake. Here's the old logging road." He pointed to a spot just north of the lake. A hand-drawn circle marked in red. Back then, we got a call from a surveyor. Said he'd found tire marks that led off into a gully. We sent a team, but the terrain was flooded from heavy rains, and the trail ended in thick brush. We figured it was just hunters. I stared at the map. What if that was them? He nodded. We think so now. But the strange part is, when we went back a week later, the tire marks were gone. Gone? Completely. Like they'd never been there. And the brush had grown thicker. Too thick for just 7 days. I never could explain that. The forensic results came in 2 weeks later. The 2 sets of remains found in the car were indeed adult. DNA from dental records matched Martha Beckett and, surprisingly, David Beckett. Both in the front. Both, somehow, positioned passively, as if they'd simply sat down and stayed. What confused the techs was the absence of trauma. No blunt force injuries. No gunshot wounds. No signs of struggle. It was as if they'd just stopped living. But that wasn't the worst part. The trunk lining contained traces of biological matter. Small, fragmented, consistent with a child, but degraded to the point of being unidentifiable. Nathan? Emily? Or someone else? That night, I returned to the lake. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd feel something. Maybe I thought, like Emily, I'd sense whatever she wrote about. That it was still there. It was cold. Too cold for early September. The moon was up, casting silver across the surface of the water. The shoreline where the car had been recovered was cordoned off with yellow tape. Everything was still. And then, I heard it. A click. Soft. Rhythmic. Mechanical. It sounded like a camera shutter. I turned toward the sound and saw nothing. Just the reflection of trees in the water, the moonlight, my own breath. Then another click. Closer. I fumbled with my flashlight, casting it toward the brush. And there, wedged between 2 stones, was an old Polaroid. It was face down, water-stained, edges warped from time. I picked it up carefully. The image was murky, grainy, but unmistakable. It was a picture of me, standing at the edge of Crescent Lake, wearing the same coat, same flashlight, taken from behind, as if someone had been watching. The timestamp on the bottom? August 28, 2002. That was tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my motel room with the Polaroid on the desk in front of me, turning it over in my hands again and again. I called the sheriff's office to ask about security footage or trail cams near the lake, none. I asked about the Polaroid's authenticity. They hadn't seen it yet. I was told to bring it in the next morning. But something told me it wouldn't be there by then. I placed the photo under my notebook, weighted it with a cup. When I woke up, it was gone. No sign of forced entry. Door locked. No broken windows. Just gone. In its place, under the cup, was a single pine needle. Wet. Fresh. But there weren't any pine trees near the motel. That morning, I met with Calvin again. He looked tired. Pale. He'd been digging through old contact sheets from the 1975 investigation. We sat in his garage, surrounded by decades of police records and fading case files. The fan in the corner clattered like a clock. He handed me a manila folder. "I didn't want to show you this before," he said. "But I think now it matters." Inside were a dozen black and white photos taken by a crime scene unit 3 weeks after the Beckett family disappeared. Someone had broken into their home. Nothing was stolen. No forced entry. Just strange things moved. Emily's shoes were arranged in a circle on her bed. David's shaving kit was emptied and placed in the oven. And in the middle of the living room floor was a bucket filled with lake water. Analysis confirmed it came from Crescent Lake. Algae samples matched. The break-in was never solved. It was logged as a prank. But Calvin always thought it was something else. "I think someone was trying to tell us something," he said. "Or warn us." A week later, I got a call from a man named Ronald Greeley. He claimed to be the Beckett family's neighbor back in 1975. Said he was 16 at the time. He'd been following the story online and wanted to talk, but not over the phone. I met him at a rest stop near the Iowa-Minnesota border. He looked like life had gone hard on him, stooped shoulders, nicotine-stained fingers, eyes that didn't quite focus. We sat at a picnic table with vending machine coffee and little privacy. "I remember that summer," he said. "It was hot. No rain. The power went out a few times on our block, but only at night. Always around 3 a.m. He lit a cigarette. "One night I was walking back from a party. I passed the Beckett's house. Their living room light was flickering, like it was being turned on and off. But when I looked through the window, I swear to God." He paused, looked down. There was water inside, like ankle deep, just on the floor. Nobody moving, just water. He said he told his father, who told him to shut up and stop drinking. So he did. He never spoke of it again. "But you know what I remember most?" he said, his voice dropping. "The sound. It was like ticking. Like a wind-up toy. Or a music box. Just barely there. Back in Columbus, I followed up with another source, the brother of Martha Beckett. He lived alone in a small ranch house and hadn't spoken publicly in decades. I brought Calvin with me. He let us in without a word. The house was dark, shelves lined with old books, photographs of people long gone. He had a single box on the table. "She gave this to me the day before they left," he said. Said if anything happened, I should keep it safe. Inside the box were 4 items. A road map with the Beckett vacation route marked in red. A disposable camera, unused. A cassette tape labeled Emily 10th birthday. A small wooden music box, hand-painted with stars and waves. The music box didn't work. But when I picked it up, I noticed something odd. It was wet, not soaked, just faintly damp. Like it had been held with wet fingers. The paint had faded slightly around the edges. Calvin took the tape. We found an old player in the garage and pushed it in. The first 10 minutes were typical birthday sounds, kids laughing, wrapping paper, tearing, off-key singing. But around the 11-minute mark, the background noise dropped. There was silence. Then, a whisper. Very faint, almost drowned by static. "Don't go near the lake again. It's not done watching us." Then static. Then the tape ended. By now, something had shifted in me. This was no longer a story I was chasing. I felt like I was being drawn into the narrative. Like threads from 1975 were wrapping themselves around the present and pulling tight. I couldn't stop thinking about that photo. The one that showed me. The timestamp. It had said August 28th. But by the time I checked out of the motel and drove back toward Crescent Lake, it was already September 3rd. I'd lost 5 days. I couldn't remember them. I looked at my phone. I had photos, images of rooms I didn't recognize, gas receipts from places I didn't remember passing. One photo showed me standing in front of a shuttered store with a sign that read, "Welcome back, Mr. Beckett." I wasn't alone in the frame. Behind me, blurry in the reflection of a storefront window, was a child. She looked about 8, wearing a dress with cartoon clouds and rabbits. I stared at the photo on my phone for over an hour. The child behind me in the reflection, it wasn't just any child. The dress she wore was identical to the one I'd seen in Emily's room at the Beckett house. Same faded clouds, same rabbits. A homemade print, Martha's brother had told me. Emily had picked the fabric herself. But that wasn't what truly froze the blood in my chest. What did, was the date in the photo's metadata. August 12, 1975. The day the Becketts vanished. I drove back to Crescent Lake in silence. No radio. No music. Just the steady hum of the engine and the creeping sense that something inside me had cracked, ever so slightly. The forest thickened as I approached, the road narrowing like a closing throat. Trees hung low, too low, like they'd grown in just to see who was coming. I parked near the yellow tape. The water was high again. The lake had swallowed the bank whole. No trace of the car now. The surface was glass. Still. Deceptively still. I stepped out and noticed something strange. My tire tracks were gone. I had driven that same dirt path 3 times already over the past weeks. The impressions should have been there, faded maybe, but visible. Now, nothing. Just soft earth. Like no one had ever been here. Like I had never been here. I walked down to the shore and stood at the edge of the water. My reflection looked wrong. The light seemed different on my face than in the sky above. I knelt, cupped my hand into the lake, and drew out a handful of water. It was warm, too warm. I turned to leave, and noticed something sticking out of the trees near the old trail. A shoe. Tiny. Blue. Canvas. Size 2. Just like the one they'd found in the backseat of the car. But this one was dry. And tied with a bow. And next to it was something else. A strip of photo paper. I picked it up carefully. The image was black and white, badly faded. But it showed 2 children, Emily and Nathan, sitting on a log, smiling at something off frame. Behind them, deep in the shadows, was a figure. Tall, indistinct, standing just at the edge of the water. Its head turned slightly, as if watching them, or maybe watching the camera. I turned the strip over. Written in tiny pencil strokes was a single sentence. "You took her picture. Now it takes you." That night, I stayed at a different motel. Just off the highway, in a town that barely showed up on maps anymore. The lobby had a bowl of dusty peppermints and a TV playing a game show with the volume too high. I took a second-floor room, locked the door, wedged a chair beneath the handle. Sleep didn't come easy, but dreams did. I saw myself standing at the lake again, holding the camera, alone, but not really. The trees whispered names I didn't know. The water pulsed like it was breathing. And then I heard it. A voice. Soft. A child's. "You're doing what they did. You're bringing it back." The next morning, the motel manager said she hadn't seen me come in. My name wasn't in the registry. My credit card hadn't been charged. Room 207 had been unoccupied for months. And yet, I held the key in my hand. She stared at it. "This isn't one of ours," she said quietly. "This one's older." She turned it over. The tag was brass. Faded engraving on the back. Crescent Motel. Room 207. Opened June-August. The Crescent Motel had burned down in 1983. I went back to Calvin with everything I had. The photo. The motel key. The second shoe. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he brought out a folder I'd never seen before. A sealed envelope inside. "This came to the department in 1976, he said. "No return address. No fingerprints. No note. We thought it was some sick prank, so it got buried." Inside were 9 photographs, all of them taken at Crescent Lake. But here's the thing. They were aerial shots. Like the one recovered from the Beckett camera. Same perspective, same lighting, same framing, all of them taken over time. Different seasons, different years, from 1976 to 1993. And in each one, barely visible, was a car. Always the same car. David Beckett's bronze Plymouth Satellite. In every photo, the car was in a slightly different position. Not sinking, not rotting, just moving, shifting, like it was trying to surface. Or trying to escape. Calvin poured himself a drink. "I shouldn't be telling you this," he said. "There were others. Other disappearances. Not many, but always in the same radius. Always during the summer. Families, couples, a few solo campers. But the bodies were never found." He showed me a list. 13 names. Between 1954 and 1990. All missing within a 10-mile radius of Crescent Lake. No connection between them. No pattern of behavior. Except one thing. Every single one of them owned a camera. The following week, a local fisherman made a strange report. He'd been on the far side of the lake, where the water was deeper, fishing for bass just before dusk. He dropped his anchor and settled in when something snagged his line. He thought it was a log. But then it moved. He said it pulled his boat almost 6 feet before snapping the line. When he reeled it in, the hook was still attached, but so was something else. A strip of soaked, curling film. He turned it in to the authorities. Only one frame was salvageable. It showed 4 people, seated in the back of a station wagon. Grainy, washed out, but their faces were turned away. All except the child in the middle. A girl, 8, maybe 9, pale, blank expression, staring straight into the lens. Behind her, through the back window, the lake shimmered. Calm, still, and just beneath the surface, something dark. Something wrong. I started having the dreams every night. Same lake, same trees, same sound of ticking, like something small winding up behind my skull. But the dreams changed. They became longer, more vivid. I wasn't just seeing things, I was there. I could feel the wet moss under my shoes, the humidity on my skin. I could smell something metallic in the air. And in each dream, I'd look down and realize I was holding the same camera David Beckett had used. The same Instamatic 133. Except this one was warm. Breathing. One night, I woke to the sound of a knock. 3 sharp raps on the motel room door. I looked at the clock. 3:17 a.m. My heart sank. That number. It had come up before. In one of the Beckett files. A witness, a janitor at a rest stop near Lanesboro, claimed he saw the Plymouth drive past his post at exactly 3:17 on the morning of August 13, 1975. Only problem was, the road had been closed for repairs that night. And it hadn't reopened until a week later. I opened the door slowly. No one was there, but on the ground, taped to the threshold, was another photo. Color, slightly faded, dated September 10, 2002. Tomorrow. It showed me asleep in the motel bed. The exact room I was in. Same sheets, same curtain, even the notepad on the nightstand, open to my messy scribbles. But in the corner of the frame, partially in shadow, was a figure. A girl, wearing a dress with clouds and rabbits. I slammed the door shut and backed away. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I went to the sheriff's office and requested access to every missing persons file connected to Crescent Lake going back to the 1940s. It took hours of bureaucracy, favors, and an exhausted deputy who remembered my uncle. What I found was a nightmare stitched across decades. There were patterns buried deep, all seemingly unconnected, until you aligned them not by year but by location and season. Always late summer, always within the week before school started. Always photographic evidence, either found later or missing entirely. But one case stood out. August 1955, a family of 3, the Jennings, disappeared while traveling through southern Minnesota. They were last seen near a logging station west of Crescent Lake. A logbook entry recovered decades later described a woman in a yellow dress walking alone along the tree line, camera around her neck, refusing to answer when called to. 2 weeks later, the station's hunting shed burned down. Inside were 4 ruined photographs. Each one of the same woman. Same yellow dress. In every photo, she was closer. That same day, I visited the Lanesboro Public Library to find archived local papers from 1975. Buried in a late August issue, I found a letter to the editor. Something's wrong with the lake. The fish are dying but no one reports it. I saw them, hundreds, belly up, circling like they were waiting for something. My father says the old stories are just stories, but the land remembers. The water does too. It was signed with just initials, E.B. Emily Beckett? The librarian confirmed the letter had been delivered anonymously. No way to prove who wrote it. But it was dated August 26, 1975, 2 weeks after the family disappeared. I started to lose time again. Gaps in the day. Missed calls I didn't remember making. I woke once in my car on a side road I didn't recognize, the engine still running, the passenger seat wet. And then I found it. In the backseat, a disposable camera, wrapped in plastic, unopened, same kind they used in the 90s. On the back, written in red ink, "Finish the roll." I hadn't taken any photos. But when I brought it to a 1-hour lab in town, the tech looked nervous when I returned. "There's already images," he said. "You want to see?" He handed me an envelope. 8 photos. One of the Beckett house at night. One of Emily's room, with the green notebook open on the bed. One of Crescent Lake, shot from below the waterline. One of Calvin. One of me, standing at the shore, holding the camera. One of the motel door, timestamped 3:17 a.m. One of the missing girl from 1955, identified later by comparison with old school photos. And one final photo. So dark it was nearly black. But under contrast, it showed a tunnel. Damp, lined with stone, leading down, and at the end of the tunnel, the shape of a car. Suspended, floating, doors open, lights on. Calvin didn't want to see the photos at first. But when he did, something in him broke. He pulled out a letter from a locked drawer in his garage. Unopened, postmarked 1979, no return address. Addressed to Calvin Ridge, Deputy Sheriff. I was too scared to open it back then, he said. It came after I'd spent too many nights out at the lake. I thought I was imagining things. But now, inside the envelope was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, written in a child's uneven scrawl. It took Daddy first, then Mom. Nathan wouldn't stop crying, so I told him to sing. I locked the doors, but the water came in anyway. It only wants the ones who look. Please tell the man with the badge. Stop taking pictures. Stop looking, before it remembers you too. And then came the final blow. The lab called back. The strip of film found by the fisherman. The one showing the girl in the back of the station wagon? They ran a facial analysis. The match was 98.6% certain. It wasn't Emily Beckett. It was a girl who'd vanished in 1992. In Missouri, hundreds of miles away. But the lake had her photo. And behind her, in that blurred window, they saw another face. Older. Mine. I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't just a story about the Becketts. It was a story that wanted to be told. A story that used people to tell it. And it was using me now. I stopped staying at motels. I stopped sleeping. I drove with the windows down and the radio off, hoping the sound of wind would drown out the voice that had started humming from the back seat. Not a voice, exactly. More like a music box winding down. I returned to the lake one final time. Calvin didn't want me to go. He begged me to stop. Said I was chasing ghosts that didn't want to be found. They don't want their names remembered. He said, they just want to stay. In the dark. In the deep. But I couldn't walk away. Not when it was calling. That morning, the fog was thick. The forest was silent. Crescent Lake looked different. The waterline had risen so much that the old path was completely submerged. Tree trunks stood half drowned. A rotten fence post bobbed near the shore. I stepped into the cold water up to my knees, the camera bag slung across my shoulder. I didn't remember bringing it, but it was the same one from the photos. Same camera, same strap, same weight. I walked the perimeter of the lake, searching for something. Anything. A landmark. A noise. A shimmer in the trees. And then I saw it. A narrow break in the tree line. It wasn't a path, exactly. More like a crease. As if something had moved through the trees, dragging the forest inward like curtains. I followed it. The ground grew wet, spongy. The trees curved overhead like ribs. My breath fogged the air. The light dimmed, even though it was midday. And then, without warning, I found the tunnel. Just like the photo. Rough stone, dripping, leading down at a steep angle. No signs, no warnings. Just a quiet, wet breath rising from the dark. I went in. The temperature dropped immediately. The walls closed around me, slick and moss-covered. My footsteps echoed softly. The deeper I went, the more I felt that strange familiarity in my bones, like I'd been here before. At some point, I stopped needing the flashlight. A faint glow pulsed at the far end of the tunnel. And as I reached it, I saw the impossible. The Plymouth Satellite, David Beckett's car, intact, upright, sitting silently in a shallow pool of dark water. Headlights on. No source. Just on. The back door was open. Inside, the seats were dry. Pristine. As if the car had just rolled off the lot. A camera sat on the passenger seat. Pointed at the door. Waiting. I stepped closer. And the air changed. It thickened. Vibrated. Like I had stepped through a membrane of warm breath. My ears popped. The water shimmered. And then I heard the door slam shut behind me. I turned, but the tunnel was gone. Just gone. Stone walls replaced by endless trees. A forest I didn't recognize. Twilight. Crickets chirping. Wind rustling dead leaves. And through the trees, a house. 2 stories. Yellow siding. Faded. Familiar. The Beckett house. I stumbled forward. The front door was open. Inside, everything was as it had been. 1975. The same wallpaper, the same ticking clock. A half-eaten sandwich on the counter. A note on the fridge that read, "Don't forget the cooler for the trip. Love, M." And then I saw her. Emily. Sitting on the floor in the hallway. Alive. Real. She looked up at me with calm, ancient eyes. "You took our picture," she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't frightened. It was tired. "You shouldn't have." I knelt in front of her. "I don't understand," I whispered. "What is this? What happened to you?" She placed something in my hand. It was the music box. The same one from her bedroom. From the cassette tape. From the old box her uncle had saved. It was dry now, but warm. "I told them to stay in the car," she said quietly. But it was already watching. It only needed one more. Just one more face. She closed my fingers around the box. "And now it has yours." Everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed in Duluth. They told me I'd been missing for 14 days. They'd found my car parked on a forest road near Crescent Lake, doors locked. Engine cold. Inside was my notebook, my clothes, and a photograph. A photo of me, sleeping in the hospital bed. Taken from the doorway. Calvin was there when I woke up. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You weren't breathing when they found you," he said. "They said you were in some kind of fugue state. But your vitals were normal. Brain activity high, like you were dreaming." I asked him for the photo. He didn't want to show me. But he did. The timestamp read, August 12, 1975. Later that week, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a single item. A roll of developed film. Every frame showed the same thing. Crescent Lake. But in each photo, the shoreline had changed. The trees moved. The waterline shifted. The lighting dimmed. And in the final frame, the lake was gone. Just dry dirt, a hollow depression in the land. And at the center, the Plymouth. Doors open, empty, waiting. I didn't tell anyone about the music box. Or that I still had it. Even though I was found with nothing, no camera, no bag, no shoes. The music box had been in my jacket pocket when I woke in the hospital. Dry, intact, and still ticking, but only when no one else was listening. It wasn't music, exactly. More like the sound of gears unwinding in slow, exhausted loops. Mechanical, almost breathless, like it was tired of playing. The days that followed were disjointed. I couldn't write, couldn't concentrate. I'd start reading my own notes only to find new pages I didn't remember writing. Symbols, dates, maps sketched in the margins. Once, a full paragraph scrawled in a child's handwriting that wasn't mine. You can't stay on the shore forever. The lake doesn't forget. It just waits for you to remember. I tried burning the pages. They came back the next day, folded neatly in my mailbox. Postmarked, Lanesboro. No stamp, no sender. Calvin stopped answering my calls. I drove out to his house one night, only to find the place abandoned. Lights off, curtains drawn, his cruiser parked out front with the door wide open. Inside, the house was undisturbed. His badge still on the coffee table. A half-drunk cup of tea on the counter, cold. His file cabinet was empty. Every single document about the Beckett case, gone. The only thing left was a photograph taped to the fridge. An old one. The Beckett family, smiling in front of their Plymouth. But someone had drawn a fifth figure in the corner. Pencil. Crude. It looked like me. That night, I returned home. My apartment felt wrong. Stretched. Like the walls were farther apart than before. The mirrors showed angles that didn't make sense. On my desk, someone had left an envelope. It contained a photograph, taken from the ceiling. It showed me, asleep in my bed. Arms folded, eyes open, staring at something outside the frame. Scrawled across the back in familiar pencil. Your turn. The next day, a news report broke out of Brainerd. A father and his two sons had gone missing during a weekend camping trip. Their canoe was found circling in the middle of a small, isolated lake 15 miles east of Crescent. All their belongings were inside. Camera, fishing gear, food, except the camera was missing all but one photo. The final frame showed the boys standing at the edge of the water, smiling. The father stood behind them, waving. And behind him, in the trees, someone was watching. The image was grainy, but digital enhancement traced out the contours of a person in a raincoat. A camera hanging from their neck. The sheriff's department released it to the public. But I didn't need to see it. I already knew. It was me. I drove. Didn't know where I was going. Just kept turning down older and older roads. Roads without lines. Roads that weren't on my map. Until I saw it again. The motel. The Crescent Motel. Still standing. But it shouldn't have been. It had burned down in 1983. Records confirmed it. Yet here it was. Yellow siding. Neon sign flickering. Vacancy. Room 207. I walked up to the door. The key was already in the lock. Inside, everything was preserved in amber. 1975 decor. Ashtray on the side table. A Gideon Bible half open to Ecclesiastes. The air smelled like damp fabric and faded memory. On the bed sat a box. Wooden. Unmarked. Inside, film rolls. Dozens of them, each labeled by hand. Jennings 1955. Thomas 1962. Redman Family 1970. Beckett 1975. Carver Girl 1992. Walker Boys 1999. And one more, labeled. I unspooled it carefully. One photo. Black and white. It showed me, standing at the shore, camera in hand. Behind me, in the water. Something moved, barely visible. Long, thin, curved like a hook. I turned the photo over. You're the one who takes the last picture now. The phone rang. Rotary. Obnoxiously loud. I picked up. No voice. Just the sound of the music box. Faint. Ticking. Slowing. Almost at its end. Then a whisper. When the music stops, it starts again. But someone new has to wind it. I left the motel. But when I stepped outside, it was no longer night. It wasn't even the same day. The sun was high. The air was dry and hot. A dusty calendar nailed to a signpost near the lot flapped in the wind. August 10, 1975. 3 days before the Beckett family vanished. And I was holding the camera. I don't know how I ended up in the town square. One moment I was leaving the Crescent Motel under a yellow 1975 Sunday. The next I was standing in front of a faded brick storefront with a Coca-Cola mural half peeling from the side. Children rode bikes barefoot down the street. A dog barked lazily behind a picket fence. A woman walked past carrying groceries wrapped in butcher paper. And no one looked at me twice. They acted like I belonged there. Like I'd always belonged there. And maybe I did. I found a payphone on the corner and called the sheriff's office. The year displayed on the town paper in the vending box confirmed it, August 10, 1975. I dialed Calvin's number. A younger voice answered, Ridge Residence. I froze. It was him. Young. Before the gray. Before the nightmares. Calvin, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This is going to sound insane. But something's going to happen. A family. The Becketts. They're going to disappear in 3 days. Silence. Then, who is this? I know you won't believe me. But you will. Eventually. Just remember this, don't go near Crescent Lake on August 13th. Whatever you see, don't follow it. Don't take any photos. And if a man shows up with a camera. He interrupted, voice sharp. How do you know my name? Click. Dial tone. I wandered through town in a daze, unsure if I'd gone back in time or if time had folded me into it. And then I saw her again. Emily. Across the street, standing by a lamppost in that same rabbit cloud dress. This time, she looked directly at me. Not like a ghost, not like a vision, but like a person who recognized another. She raised her hand and pointed behind me. I turned, and there it was, the Plymouth Satellite, parked outside a diner. David and Martha inside at a booth, laughing, sipping sodas. Emily and Nathan giggling in the backseat, coloring books in hand. The last ordinary moment of their lives. And I was watching it. Something inside me broke open. The camera in my hand buzzed softly. The shutter moved on its own. A click, a snapshot. I looked down at the photograph slowly sliding out. It hadn't developed yet, but I already knew what it would be. I was the last one to take their picture. I ran, through alleys, behind buildings, deeper into the parts of town where the light didn't quite reach. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. Had I always been part of this? Was I the thread tying the disappearances together? Had others stood in my place before, holding the same camera, walking the same path? I ended up behind the town's hardware store. Breathless, bent over. And there, pinned to a power pole, was another photo. Me, from behind, looking at the Plymouth, time-stamped August 10, 1975. But that wasn't the worst part. In the reflection of the diner window, a figure watched me. Holding a camera, wearing my clothes, I left town that night. Drove the Plymouth. Yes, their Plymouth. The keys had been left in the ignition. No one stopped me. The roads rolled past in silence, the tires humming along faded blacktop as if retracing an old, cursed route. And when I reached the lake, I knew exactly where to go. The road that had vanished long ago was still there. The logging trail. Unpaved, narrow, trees bending in. The lake glistened ahead under the moonlight, quiet and soft and terrible. I parked at the same angle. Got out, placed the camera on the roof. Took one step forward, and then I heard it. A click behind me. I turned, and saw myself. Older, tired, holding the same camera. Click, a flash, and the world dissolved. I woke on a dock. A child's shoe floating beside me. Crescent Lake, now, was dry. The car, rusted and peeled apart, stood like a skeleton in the center of the basin. Around me, strangers stood in a loose circle, silent. Each one holding a camera. Each one with a different face. Old, young, male, female, but their eyes were the same. Tired, guilty. They were the ones who took the pictures. Like me, and like the one who came before. And the one who would come next. I stood slowly. No one spoke. A woman I'd never seen before handed me a roll of undeveloped film. Written on the canister. For the next one, I never left the lake. Not really. They found me a week later. Wandering along the tree line, muttering names that didn't belong to me. My clothes were torn. My fingernails caked with silt. My pupils unnaturally wide. They said I was lucky to be alive. But they didn't see what I saw. Didn't feel what I felt. Didn't carry what I carried. Because something came back with me. I tried going home. Back to my apartment. Back to my bookshelves, my framed prints, the tea mug I always left by the sink. But nothing fit anymore. I'd lie in bed at night and hear the sound of shutters clicking from the hallway. I'd wake with my door wide open. A film roll on the kitchen table. Photos I didn't take. One morning I opened my closet and found a stack of newspapers I'd never seen before. Family vanishes on road trip. Police find abandoned car in forest. Each article told a different version of the story. Different names. Different dates. Same ending. Always a car. Always a lake. Always a camera. I tried burning the photos. They reappeared in my mailbox. I buried them. They returned, tucked into library books I hadn't opened in years. I stopped trying. Started collecting. Labeling. Curating. I live in a small town now. Quiet place. Not on most maps. There's a lake nearby, but no one goes there. Kids say it's haunted. Old-timers say it dried up long ago, but sometimes at dusk, you can still hear something moving beneath the ground. Like water remembering how to be wet again. I know better. I don't go near it. I just listen and wait. Last week, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid. Crescent Lake from above. In the corner of the frame, a car, newly submerged. Not the Plymouth. A modern car. Silver. License plate half visible. Not mine. Not yet, but familiar. Beneath the photo, a note in handwriting I recognized immediately, mine. If you're reading this, you've already seen it. If you've seen it, you've already taken the picture. If you've taken the picture, it's too late. The music box still ticks. I keep it in a drawer. Wrapped in cloth. But some nights, especially in August, I hear it playing from somewhere else in the house. Even when the drawer is locked. Even when I'm holding the key. And last night, I found something under my pillow. A camera. Fully loaded. Brand new. And taped to it, a yellowed sticky note with just 3 words. Your turn again. So if you ever find yourself driving north in late summer, and you see a narrow road that doesn't show up on GPS, and there's a lake at the end, so still it looks painted on. Don't stop. Don't look. And whatever you do, don't take the picture. Because that's how it starts. And something always has to remember. When the lake forgets.